Hello, everybody. I am on. How are you? It's good to be here. Okay, so my sister asked me to come and talk here to you all here today. And I said, well, who's the audience going to be? Now, my normal audience are law school students. They are other professors. They are educators. They are people in the sports business. I just got back from a conference talking at ESPN is starting a new channel, ESPNW. She said, well, these are people who are interested in social media marketing and who are interested in selling product and whatnot. Great! So you all are a new audience for me. But I really appreciate this opportunity because it's given me the opportunity to think about how it is that what I do, how it fits within a marketing scheme. Okay? So I'm going to talk about the power trigger to achieve gender equity. Okay, so here's where we're headed. First, I'm going to just sort of do what I do. I'm going to talk to you about gender equity in athletics. Okay? And then, after I do what I do, then I'm going to talk to you about how the power trigger gets infused in all that. All right, we're going to start off very simply. Title I is a statute. As you all know, we have three branches of government. We have the judiciary, we have the legislature, and the executive branch. The legislature passed this statute way back in 1972. Very simply, it says that if an educational institution receives federal funds, in exchange for which they have to agree not to discriminate on the basis of sex. Pretty simple, right? If you receive federal funds, you can't discriminate based on sex. Okay? If you don't want to receive federal funds, and there's about 2 schools in the entire country that do not, then you're not beholden to this law. So that's it. That is the entire statute, those words right there. It's not any bigger or any smaller than that. You'll notice what it doesn't say on there. It does not say athletics. It does not say pregnancy. It does not say sexual harassment. It does not say admissions. It does not say math class. All it says is you can't discriminate based on sex in educational institutions that receive federal funds. Well, guess what? It turns out that athletics is an educational opportunity. Not only is it an educational opportunity, it's a very, very good one. Well, let's see what this law has done. The law was passed in 1972. Where's my little pointer? Okay. So in 1972, pointer. Come on. Pointer, pointer. Ah, here we go. Okay. So in 1972, right here, you can see boys in the high school have 3.6 million sports opportunities. Okay? And girls had just under 300,000. Okay? The most recent figures that have been out in 2010, 2011, boys now have 4.4 million, almost 4.5 million sports opportunities, and girls now have 3.1 million opportunities. This is a percentage increase of 979 percentage points. It is hard to get real change like that without some kind of grounding in federal law. It's very difficult to convince people, one person at a time, as to why it is that girls should have equal educational opportunities, including athletics, right? If you don't have some backup behind. And the backup is where the power comes from. But notice a couple things. So that's the good news. Woo, 900%, great. The bad news is, if you notice, girls today still have fewer opportunities than boys did in 1972. Okay? And notice that the difference here between these here is 1.3 million sports opportunities between what girls have and what boys have. That is a huge chunkamunka. Okay? You've often heard, I'm going to show you some more slides later, but you've often heard that Title IX takes opportunities away from boys. Okay? But look right here. When you see boys have actually increased by 22% as well. Okay, so not just girls have increased, but also boys have increased as well. College participation, same kind of numbers, not quite as much, because the market in, or the sports opportunities in college are so much smaller than the sports opportunities that are available in high school. I just want to show you at the Olympics how many more countries are now sending women to the Olympic Games. Right now, there are only 4 countries that are not sending women to the Olympic Games. This is a huge social movement. Has gone throughout the world. Okay, So let's talk for a second about sports participation and what does it mean for a kid, for both boys and girls. But let's just talk girls for a second here about what does it mean for a kid to participate in sports for the rest of their lives, not just while they're there, okay? And the Women's Sports Foundation, the organization that I work for, I'm the Senior Director of Advocacy. I've actually got a 25-year history with them. I was a volunteer for the first 25 years, and I just got a paycheck starting last year with them. I've been their legal advisor since 2003. But we have if you go onto our website, womensportsfoundation.org, we have a compendium of 2,500 peer-reviewed academic articles that talk about what a sports experience means for a girl. So any one article isn't so valuable, but looking at them in total is really powerful. So there have been lots of research studies, for example, that look at what is pregnancy rates, how do they differ for athletes versus non-athletes. And the pregnancy rate for young girls, high school, early college age, is fairly stable, year in, year out, all different parts around the country. It changes a little bit here and there, but it's roughly 11%. 11% of that age group, there'll be pregnancy. So not all of them carry and whatnot, but anyway, so athletes, it's 1%. 1%. Women over the age of 65, 50% of them have osteoporosis. Okay? The way you prevent osteoporosis is weight-bearing exercise in adolescence. Weight-bearing exercise in adolescence is how you prevent that. So we look at the drug use that's going on right now for heart disease and stroke and cardiovascular health and diabetes and obesity. We look at what's going on right now pushed into adulthood, and we look at what are some ways that we know for certain are ways of preventing those problems right now. They are in high school athletics. And college athletics as well, I should say. If John Falconetti, is he still here? John Falconetti, his wife is Shannon Miller. I don't know if he's here, but his wife is Shannon Miller, right here in Jacksonville, Florida, who has an anti-obesity campaign. Well, guess what? The number one way to prevent lifelong obesity is guess what? High school athletic experience. Number one way, preventing it. So we look at long-term health costs, okay? When we look at pregnancy rates, people talk about how important sports are for boys because they get into violence, they get into trouble, we need to keep them busy. Well, guess what? Girls who are not kept busy get pregnant. Okay, so there are reasons why we want to keep everybody there that are involved in sports. Okay, let's talk about academics. Betsy Stevenson is an economist at Wharton Business School. And she did this amazing research, which looked at what happened to the girls who were pre-Title IX, 1972, what happened in the chunk when Title IX was sort of in flux, and then what happened afterwards, okay? So she was able to take this metadata and was able to, we've known for a long time that kids that play sports did better in school, okay? But it could be, actually, they would have done even better if they just hadn't been involved in sports because they were the kind of kid that was just going to do well in school, that was also involved in sports, right? So it's hard to tell if is it an association or is it causation? Okay, so which one is it? And she was actually able to tease out the fact that sports rates change so much. See, I immediately hold my stomach in when he comes in. Yeah. That she was able to show that sports rates are very, very different for different states. I hope this is my next slide. Let me show, hold on. Well, no, we're not ready for that one yet. Okay, sports rates are very different for different states. Some states offer lots and lots of sports experiences for girls. So states up north in the Midwest, so New Hampshire, Minneapolis, or Minnesota, Nebraska offer over 100% of their kids with sports opportunities. I know what you're thinking, how can that be? You're supposed to be the academic here. There are 3 seasons in sports. So if one kid plays 3 sports, right? So technically, if every kid played a sport every season, there'd be 300% participation, right? So they have over 100%, okay? We here in Florida are second to last. We are second to last. We have only 30% of our sports opportunities go to kids, and girls get only 20% of girls have a sports opportunity. Only 20% of girls in the state of Florida have a sports opportunity. So girls in New Hampshire have almost 3 times the sports experiences that boys do here in Florida. Okay? So what she was able to show was, by looking at these different rates, right? So some states were adding a lot of sports, and girls were getting a measure of those, and some sports like Florida were not. Then she looked at what happened in those different states with education. Okay? Were they getting more education? And then she compared them to things like other after-school activities, like being in a yearbook, or being in student government, or something like that, and found that, in fact, that sports and sports alone caused more education. That the states that added the most sports saw the most women going into higher education and getting more education. That participating in those other after-school activities was highly correlated with the kind of parents that somebody had, right? So education rates, generally speaking, are highly associated with the kind of parents that somebody comes from. So it's no accident that my parents here, who value education more than anything else. So my parents really didn't know a lot of times like what my best times were, or my dad always had a card in his pocket that he'd whip out and say, you know, what my times were if somebody asked him. But he always knew what my grades were. He and my mom always knew what my grades were. And same with my sister and my brother. And so that was just a value that they had, that they passed along. So it's right. So what can we do to break out of that mold? Okay? Sports, we know, actually causes more education. So, also sports, so you got academic benefits, health benefits, obesity benefits. You also have sort of self-esteem and confidence issues that girls that play sports they just feel better about themselves. They have higher self-esteem. They're not so likely to get into the social media world, the bad social media world that tells women that the only thing that's important to them is what they look like and whether or not they pulled their stomach in. So, in essence, we can make the claim very, very clearly that sports are an excellent investment in all of our futures for the long-term health of our economy, having a productive workforce, people who are in the workforce, who are working, who are healthy, who are not draining our system with being unhealthy, and who are better educated. Okay? Sports are an excellent investment in our long-term future. I think those of you that have had a sports experience, whether or not it was associated with high school or club, or whether or not you just started running on the weekends, know that for most people, I teach a sports law class, and 100% of my students are involved in sports. Sports is a very defining experience. It's different from taking calculus or advanced biology or a marketing class. It really defines who they are and shapes who they become. It teaches them things that's very difficult to learn on a blackboard about how to win, how to lose, how to postpone short-term gratification for long-term rewards, those kinds of things that sports gives people the opportunity to be able to do. Okay? Compliance with sports should be very simple. Now, everybody else here brought their children somehow into their talk, so I thought I would too. Okay? So Sally actually had like the live deal back there, but mine are still a little young. I have twin girls, and that's my 10-year-old son. Okay, so compliance really should be simple. In our family, we have one probably very similar to yours, which is when you're dividing up the toast, one person cuts and the other person divides. The NCAA, their definition of gender equity is when both sides would be pleased to accept as their own the resources of the other gender. Okay, that sounds pretty much like families growing up, okay? So compliance should be simple. Unfortunately, my services are still needed quite a bit, as you can see from the 1.3 million difference between what boys and girls have. And sometimes you'll hear schools say, well, if they have to tell the boys no, if they have to tell that kid right there, no, you can't start a new team, you can't, we're going to have to cut a team, whatever, they'll blame the law on it. And they'll say it's because of Title IX that we have to tell you no. Okay? Now, let me tell you how that works in a family situation. You tell me what kind of leadership this would be. If every time my son came to me who wanted something else, let's say he wants to start another sport, okay? And for what, my husband and I, we can't get him there, or we can't do it, we can't afford it, or whatnot. If every time he asked me for something, if I blamed it on his sisters, pretty quickly, he would resent them immediately. It would not take long before he would, okay, or alternatively, I could also blame my husband, right? I could also say, it's not me. It's, he actually thinks that everybody here should get treated the same. So I could make my son really resent my husband as well by not taking responsibility for the ethos of making sure that all of our kids have equal educational opportunities. So, but that, again, that's what schools do frequently, is they don't say, guess what, listen, I'm the leader here, and we're going to make sure, here's what the budget is, we're going to make sure that all the kids who are participating here have equal educational opportunities. Instead, they'll blame the law, or they'll blame the girls. I've actually been involved in some lawsuits where I was talking to the athletic director, and the athletic director says, if these girls, it was a softball team, you're going to see them later, these girls ask for the same thing that the boys have, I'm going to take away from the boys. Can you imagine me telling my daughters, don't you dare expect what your brother has, or I'm going to take away from the boys? That is the world's poorest parenting, I think we would all agree, and also the world's poorest leadership for schools, not to embrace this ethic here. All right, so this is actually some litigation that I was involved in. This is comparing a girls' softball field with the boys' baseball field. All right, so this is looking at third base. This is a look on the outside for the girls' varsity softball field. That's the same view of the boys' baseball field. Here's the girls' softball field from first base. Okay, same view of the boys' baseball field. This is that's a broken water fountain right here. These are the bleachers I'm going to show you another picture of in just a second. And this is the boys, their overall facilities. Okay, this is the softball field. This is their quote-unquote dugout. Okay, so this bench here doesn't even seat enough for all the players to sit on, so they had to sit on the ground. Okay, this is the boys' baseball field. There's their dugout. So even if it's raining, they still have opportunities there. There's the bleachers for the girls, and there are the bleachers for the boys. Okay, there's the varsity baseball field. They have a bullpen. The girls did not even have a bullpen. This is the junior varsity softball field and their dugouts, the dugouts right there. And this is the junior varsity baseball field. And then this is the third field for the boys. This is their multi-use field. Okay. Yeah, right. So, so obviously it takes a lot of planning and forethought to build athletic facilities, right? So schools are planning now for what kids are going to have in 5 years. And that took planning to execute that. Now remember, this was litigation. This was usually, the best case scenario is I can call up somebody and say, listen, you got a problem here and you really need to get it fixed. And, what's your plan and what are you going to do and whatnot. You shouldn't have to utilize a federal court to get involved with something like that. I mean, I doubt anybody here in this audience would say that those two boys and girls are getting the same experience. Not only are they not getting the same experience, but it's not just important for the kids who are actually doing it, but imagine the math class looking at that, the boys and girls that are in the math class. What kind of signals are they getting about the importance of athletics for boys and girls? Or about the importance, athletics are the only place in all of education, and probably all of employment as well, other than bathrooms, that we send boys and girls into different places. Boys go here, girls go here. there is this wonderful drug called testosterone that after puberty makes a huge difference. And if we want girls and women to be able to play sports, we have to sex segregate. So it's one of the only places that we do sex segregate in the country. So what does that tell the debate team? What does that tell all the rest of the school programming about how the school treats boys and girls differently? When that girl goes in, we know that women make much less than men do. When they go in for that first job and they get told that they're going to make $500 less than what their colleagues are making, they think, well, it's just $500. You know, it's not. I mean, I can make that up. Turns out that gap grows over time. Okay, so we don't want to be sending that messages to kids. Okay, I'm aware of 4 major polls that deal with Title IX: Wall Street Journal, CNN, USA Today. The most recent one was just done by the New York Times. Okay, so even people who don't know anything about Title IX, they've never even heard of the statute, they will say that they're in favor of boys and girls having equal sports opportunities. So, and these numbers are true for Democrat, Independent, Republican, Northeast, Southwest part of our country, for people older, people younger, people with kids, people without kids. Pretty much, you know, the numbers will be a little bit more for some, a little bit less for another, but that is pretty much the numbers, and it's been consistent, I'm aware of, for the last 10 years, being in favor of it. Big question is, does Title IX cause schools to drop men's sports? Here are the numbers. Here's the trend over time. We've already seen that how boys did do better, have done better, they have increased in sports opportunities. But see this line here? Okay, this is the line for boys for high school. This is the line for girls for high school. I want you to notice since the year roughly 2000, this delta in here has actually grown. It is not. So my job, my world, is about moving this number up. Okay, that's what the alpha and omega of what I do. What can I do to move that number up? Here's the same line for college, and again, you'll see the same thing since about the year 2000. This delta here has actually grown. Even at a time when more women are going to college, the differential has actually grown. These are the most popular sports for boys or for girls. This is sort of what's growing since, as you can see, since 1981. These are the most popular sports. These are the most popular sports for boys and what's growing for them. This is that slide I was talking about earlier about how different states offer different amounts of sports. The demand for sports is enormous. I would argue that even in Iowa and Maine, that even these states here, that if they offered 20% more sports opportunities, they would fill up like that. Okay? If they offered skateboarding, or they offered rodeo, or they offered, right? You name the sport. It doesn't have to be a more traditional sport. But given what we know about what it means for a kid for the rest of their life to have played as part of their education. You know, we are the only country that does this, that pairs education with athletics. The rest of the world doesn't do it that way. We did it 100 years ago, and I think it was a brilliant maneuver because it made sure that sports were available more broadly. Okay, and again, there's Florida right there. Only Washington, D.C. offers fewer opportunities. You'll see that the gray line here is what's offered to boys, and the black line there is offered to girls, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is 20%. Right? So the state of Florida could literally quadruple the amount of sports opportunities that they are providing for their kids right now. We're looking at all the problems that we have with our school system generally, and when the sports budget gets squeezed, you know, we should be doing whatever we can to do just the opposite of that. All right, you may have heard, girls just aren't interested in playing sports. We can't find enough girls to be able to play sports. Really? Tell me about it. Okay, so here is the line for 3.1 million girls playing high school sports. This is all of NCAA sports participation for females, and this is Division I. This is where the scholarships are. 77,000. Okay, there's only, so you're going from 3.1 to 77,000, and you can't find them? Really? Okay, not very convincing. Okay, boys over here, you'll see how their lines are. They have they're bigger in all respects. Okay, it's akin to saying that, you know, the NFL, I just can't find those athletes that want to play in its very lucrative league. Of course they can. There's lots and lots of demand to be able to do this. Okay, all right. So that's kind of the spiel that I give when I talk to universities or when I talk to other people and educators about why it is so important. I'm actually looking for somebody who has time and has the ability to make a difference here in Duval County. Duval County has got a problem right now. They offer 2 sports for women that they don't offer for men. So boys have 1 sport that they don't offer for women called football, and girls have 2 sports that they don't offer for boys called weight training and flag football. Okay, football costs $455 per kid. Okay, flag football costs $115 per kid. Okay, so I thought, well, maybe the difference is football uniforms are so much more expensive, and so that's why they cost so much. The sport costs so much more. It turns out, I did some investigation. No, it's because their season is shorter. They don't have as many competitions. They don't have as many practices. In other words, they're not getting the same thing as what the football players are doing, right? So I don't. Like what form the sport takes, I'm not so interested in, whether or not it's rigorous as football, whether or not it provides them with the same educational opportunities. Those 2 sports in particular don't provide girls with any entree into those other, to more education, right? So football and every single boys' sport here in Duval County leads to college scholarships, being able to play, right? Having a door open for them. Those other 2 sports for girls do not. It's a closed door. Once they do it, it's over. I don't have any problem with that as long as boys and girls are getting the same thing, but all boys have more entree, and a large chunk of girls do not have that entree. So I'm looking for somebody here in Duval County to be able to help me with this project. I really don't want to go to federal court. I'd much rather do it. You know, most of us know who the people are that could potentially make this change. All right, so fascinating organization. So the Women's Sports Foundation has been around since 1974, founded by Billie Jean King, Wilma Rudolph, Donna Deverona, great women athletes who kind of got it, that women athletes needed a place to both celebrate what it is that they were doing. They were not getting a lot of media attention. And they wanted to make sure that girls en masse had those sports opportunities. Okay, so fascinating organizations, they provoke strong and immediate emotional reaction. Now, how do I know that this is true? Because that 25 years that I've been working with the foundation, when I tell people that that's what I do, they immediately want to tell me about their sports experience. They immediately want to tell me about how important it is for their kids to be able to play sports. So who are my customers? Who are the people that pay us? Okay, our 2 groups. One is creates advocates. One is men with daughters. Men with daughters who grew up, they knew sports were very important with them. They see the fire in their daughters' eyes, and they are the ones who are going to make sure that their daughters have those same sports experiences. Men with daughters. Oh, I love them to death. And the second group is that group of women who are right on the cusp, women like me, of whether or not they got a sports experience depended on what their age was. So I'm going to be 50 in April. Thank you, yeah. And when I tell my students that I'm going to be 50, I totally expect that reaction that you just gave me, and they don't. They go, mm-hmm. So anyway, I really lucked out. Okay, so if I had my same credentials, but I was 2 years older, I would not have been able to compete in college. But as it just so happened, my birthday, 1962, right? So by 1972, by the time the law gets to, so 1980 is when I went to high school, and then suddenly, it was like somebody took a match to the entire country, and I pretty much could have gone on scholarship wherever I wanted to go. So went to Duke University, yay, I'm full scholarship. All right, so the women who are right on that cusp, so they knew that they got this sports opportunity, they knew that they got this educational opportunity because of the law. Becomes cultural shorthand for a specific set of actions or values, and they know how to spell too. So becomes cultural shorthand, okay? So when people talk about Title IX, it becomes cultural shorthand for just the importance of women having opportunities in education. It incites conversation, it forces competitors to align around it, and it triggers social revolutions. What Betsy Stevenson's research was able to show is that 40% of our workforce, the women who are in our workforce, it's attributable to this statute. So if you want a well-educated workforce here, if you want a healthy workforce and a productive workforce, that Title IX and sports for both boys and girls is a great way to be able to achieve it. So in talking a little bit about the power, so when you think of women in sports, it's typically a non-dominant position, right? You're usually the one saying, please give me more. But so I could sort of adopt that position of please give me more. But thank goodness we have this federal statute there that certainly makes it a lot easier. 2 is acquiring expertise. So how it is that somebody acquires expertise. You know, I wrote a book called Equal Play that's been adopted at Harvard Law School. No big deal. But just, you know, being able to, you know, it hasn't sold anywhere near what Sally's book has sold, but for the niche market that it has, it's doing very, very well. And I do think that power trigger has to be used sparingly. You all know this, those of you that are parents out there, that you can't just, you know, require your kids to do things just because you say so. But so used judiciously, it can be very, very effective. The line that I love to use, but I try to use it as little as possible, is you can either listen to me or you can listen to a federal judge. Okay? If you listen to me right now, it's free. By the time we get to the federal judge, you're going to be $100,000. Okay? So either one, whichever one you're on. There's only 2 things people argue about in litigation: is the facts and the law. So the facts is, was the light red or was the light green? And what was somebody's glasses, et cetera. Okay? In sports, everybody knows what the facts are, right? They're those pictures I showed you. And then the law, we've now had 40 years of case law, and it is crystal clear. It is not a lot of ambiguity left. And all that needs to happen is for people like you to be empowered, to have the power, to know enough, to be able to go into your school and make sure that your kids are getting great educational opportunities, right? So I can't handle every situation around the country. We take 40, the Women's Sports Foundation takes 40 phone calls a week. 40 phone calls a month on different situations, and it's my job to make sure that they have what they need, the power that they need to be able to go in and talk to an athletic director about getting the resources for their daughters to be able to play sports. So thank you very much for having me here. Appreciate it.